take one samurai executioner, one small child, a baby cart, a bunch of weird villains, 6 films, and what do you have? Lone Wolf and Cub. That's the topic for today's episode. This is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy. This is not my closet. Still not available, but we're going to persevere. And today we're going to look at Lone Wolf and Cub. I watched all 6 films in the series. Was it worth it? Let's find out. Plus, 2 words of the day. Lone Wolf and Cub is based on a very popular manga series. There's 28 volumes of it. It looks, I'm going to assume this is some of the pages from the manga series that's included in the booklet here. And the lead actor, Tomasaburo Wakayama, and I'm sure I'm not saying that right, he approached the creator of the manga and said, let's do a series of films about it. Now, Wakayama was not the most physically fit looking guy, kind of overweight, so he had to prove he was the right guy, so he did a bunch of somersaults for the writer, and then he showed some of his sword playing techniques for the writer, and he also had a lot of great creative ideas and would call him up all the time and say, let's try this, let's try that. So he was definitely the right guy for the series. There are 6 films in the series. They were released between 1972 and 1974. One director shot 4 of the 6 films, and the films are serious, they're comical, they're violent, they're philosophical, they are cinematic, and they're also erotic sometimes. These are what they call chanbara films, and that's your first word of the day. Chanbara means sword fighting, and in English we usually refer to these types of films as samurai film genre. So I always saw Lone Wolf and Cub in the store. I saw it on websites. I always wondered, what is this thing about? So basically this is what it's about. It's all set up in the first film, Sword of Vengeance from 1972. This is what the box set looks like. And it's about a shogun executioner named Ito, and he's framed for the killing of his wife. And so everybody wants to go after him. And he takes his little boy, Daguro, and he puts him in a baby cart, and they travel the countryside as hired assassins because he says, we're on our demon way to hell. And the manga creator said he added the little boy into the mix to give it a sense of vulnerability. If it was just a samurai going around as a hired assassin and fighting off villains, it wouldn't be as interesting as having something at stake with the little boy there as well. Some of these people want to seek revenge against Ito. Some want to challenge him. He is now a Ronin, and there's our second word for the day. A Ronin is a samurai who no longer serves a feudal lord. The samurai scenes, fight scenes throughout the series are very interesting. There's really no music set to them. It doesn't amp up the action or anything. They're very quiet. There's usually not always, but often a big build-up to the fights, and then they end very quickly, maybe with one slice of the sword. There's lots of blood that sprays out like a Roman candle or like a sprinkler on full throttle. And let me show you what that looks like. In one of these photos here, you can tell right there. So there's a guy getting his neck impaled with a sword, and you can see the blood spurting out. And that is how it is in all these films, and that really comes from the manga. That's how they were in the manga. They also zoom in a lot on the eyes of the characters, where they go back and forth. Their eyes go back and forth, and the camera cuts back and forth to each character's eyes, sort of like in those Sergio Leone films, the spaghetti westerns. And sometimes the bad guys can be really, really bad, almost cartoonishly bad, but you never really laugh at them. They really are not silly or goofy. They do seem like real bad guys that can do evil things. The second film in the series is called Baby Cart at the River Styx, again from 1972. This one has been called the quintessential Lone Wolf and Cub film, and that's probably pretty accurate. There's a lot more fighting in this one, a lot more blood in this one. There are female warriors who prove themselves against the top ninja. There are the female warriors on top. You can see they always pose certain ways. And there's the ninjas on the bottom. So the female warriors have to prove themselves against their best ninja. And boy, they certainly do. And there's a lot of flying around. And then you see the ninja's nose fly in one direction, and his ear flies in another direction. Then his fingers fly off. And there's so much blood, it's even splashing onto the camera lens. But the blood in these things is so bright red that it seems so over the top that it's not really graphic or gross. You don't go, like that or anything. The third film is Baby Cart to Hades. Again, 1972. I think this one is the weakest one of the lot. It's a slower paced film. There's a lot of backstory to Ito and some other characters. There are more female characters, including women who work in and run brothels, women in charge, and there's a rape scene. And I don't know why, but there seem to be a lot of rape scenes in some of these Japanese films I've been watching, even the Kurosawa films, and in some of these films, and I'm not sure why that is. Now, before we go further, let me mention the acting. Wakayama is the main character, Ito, is very still, very stoic, very authoritative, not blinking. His son, Daiguro, is just as stoic as the dad is. He's probably 4 or 5 years old. There's a picture of him there. And there is a picture of the dad and the son there. And he barely speaks in the film. He might have 1 or 2 words he says here and there. And the baby cart itself is pushed through all kinds of terrain in this film, from mountainsides to desert areas to snow, even floats on water at one point. But I'm going to tell you more about the baby cart, which is not your typical baby cart at all, later on in this video. The fourth film is called Baby Cart in Peril. It's again from 72. This one really amps up the female nudity a lot, with the female character, Yuki, and she basically fights topless in about half of the scene she's in. Now, Ito is hired to assassinate her, and we hear her backstory, and she was raped, and then she decided to get tattoos covering the front and back of her, and those tattoos, when she fights somebody, she takes off her top, and the tattoos kind of hypnotize her adversaries. So there's an interesting set piece set in a temple where Ito often goes, wherever he is, as he travels the countryside, and to pray, and to probably ask for forgiveness or something. And his eyes dart around, and sure enough, there's about 6 statues in the temple, and they all come to life, and they bust out, and they're all ninjas, and there's a big fight scene with limbs flying back and forth of the ninjas as they fight. The fifth film is called Baby Cart in the Land of Demons from 1973. And there's a lot of rules play into this one about disgrace and saving face, and when you have to commit harikiri, and when you're supposed to pray, and what you're supposed to pray to, and all that kind of stuff. There's an interesting side character who's a pickpocket, female, named Quick Change Oyo, and there's a little subplot with her. You also learn more about Ito's code of honor, and we learned about that in some other films too. And he is hired to kill a 5-year-old boy. It's kind of a long story, but he's reluctant to do that, of course, and he wants to know the reasons behind it before he even considers it. There's a final battle with heads being chopped off, torsos cut in half, and when I'm talking about a torso, it's cut in half. The second half of the torso is still standing. The top half topples over. So, like I said, it's not very realistic, so you don't see a lot of veins and sinews and stuff like you would in a horror film. So it really doesn't gross you out that much. It's just kind of interesting how they do it. And somehow, I guess these samurai swords, or at least his sword, slices right through bones, because that's what he does. You might see him slice through somebody's legs. The 2 parts of the legs will still be standing. The rest of the body falls over. And so he's up to all kinds of shenanigans in this one, all kinds of battles and violence. And basically, he's saying, hey, we're on the demon way to hell anyway, so what the heck, let's go for it. The sixth and final film is called White Heaven and Hell. It's from 1974, and the series really ends on a high note with this one. There's an over-the-top scene where this one fighter is stabbed, and he's bleeding, and he walks into his sister's room. She's naked, And he says, "You must bear my seed because I want to have an heir to my legacy before I die." And she says, "No way, dude." And so he basically gets on top of her while she's naked, and he's attacking her and he's raping her. In the middle of this, Dad walks in. He goes crazy, takes out his samurai sword and stabs right through both of them, sort of like a shish kebab. There's also a scene that is similar to a scene from an earlier film where Ito is sitting somewhere and he looks back and forth like this, very still, and suddenly he throws 6 daggers quickly into a wall. And everybody else in the room is like, "Why is he doing that?" And then you see some blood trickling down from the daggers in the wall, and sure enough, 6 men fall out of the wall. So he knew they were there, and he killed all 6 like that. Somehow he could see through the wall. I'm not sure how, but we'll just, go with it. And by the way, there are also some zombies, some undead warriors who come to attack Ito in this one. The highlight of the film is a long climactic battle. Baby carts basically on skis, sort of like a sled, going through these mountainous hills of snow. This involved about 100 stuntmen and professional athletes and skiers having this huge battle, and it was in sub-freezing temperatures, and it took about a month and a half to film this thing. So the bottom line is, Lone Wolf and Cub, very entertaining, a lot of fun to watch, very well done films. Cinematically, they're beautifully photographed and well acted, and just a whole lot of fun. Each of these films is under 90 minutes, so they're very fast paced. They move along swiftly and very entertaining. Now, on the disc, you get this nice box. You get the films, of course. 3 discs, 3 films here, 3 films here, some bonus material on this disc. The bonus material include something called a Shogun Assassin. So what they did is they took the first 2 films, dubbed it in English, and made an American, something for the American audience. I didn't bother watching it because I just watched all 6 films. I'd rather watch the originals, but I can understand how they would take the first 2 and put them together. There's also an interview with the guy who created the manga. There's an interview with somebody who talks a lot about the director for the films. There is a little documentary on the making of a samurai sword, and there's a little documentary with a sensei who's showing the proper way to use a samurai sword. You also have a booklet, very nice. It's about 30 pages or so, and it gives an explanation of the films series, and then there's a little discussion of each of the films too. But there's also a surprise, because you open up the spine here, and as I mentioned earlier, the baby card is very interesting. And look, they hid something in the spine. And what is it? It is a diagram of the baby cart, because this is no typical baby cart. There are knives that shoot out from the wheels. There's doors that open up here, and machine guns blast away the opponents. What happens is Ito, the father, he says, "Daguro," and Daguro pushes a button or pulls a switch, and the doors open up and the guns fire. Or he'll pull a switch and the knives come out. There's also knives here, and he's got a knife up here where the handle is. Usually when he pushes this cart, he only pushes with one hand, because the other hand is inside his little, whatever they call that outfit, so he can maybe pull out some sort of weapon. But that's pretty cool. It's a lot of little different gadgets on this baby cart that come into play through all the films. So you can get this, if you get a sale, you can get it for $50, which I think is pretty good. Full price is $100. That's a little bit too much to pay, I think. But really loved watching Lone Wolf and Cub, and hopefully you'll like it. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. So feel free to leave a comment or a suggestion right down here. Feel free to leave a thumbs up. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Share this with your friends and neighbors. Otherwise, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.